Hi, welcome everybody. This is Mihai Algiu, psychotherapist, associate somatic psychotherapist, founder of Circle of Being Shadow Work. And this is my guest, friend, and mentor, teacher, Scott Killaby, who is a spiritual author, non-dual teacher. And he also developed various modalities to work with addiction, with trauma, with embodiment. So both of us, we are deeply interested in this intersection between spiritual teachings, enlightenment teachings from the East, and science-informed, trauma-informed ways to process our limiting beliefs and, let's say, from my area, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, compulsions, addictions, trauma, all of that. Somehow we both, before we met each other, we were on the same page of the necessity to thoroughly explore practices, teachings, and do inner work, both on this transcendental consciousness awakening plane, as well as the personal ego, psychology, somatic psychotherapy. Although we somehow seemingly we are different boats, it's very much the same thing. And for those of you who are watching this, know that this is episode number 24. We had 23 other previous dialogues that are all on a playlist, both on Scott's website as well as on my YouTube channel, and you can have the link right here in the comments. So I'm very excited today. I've watched you and learned from you since before I met you, and it seems like your work developed, refined, became more precise. And although you haven't written a book for a long time, I feel that the recent development and what we are going to talk today is like the new book in some way. It's like it's a map. Actually, we are going to talk about the map of the 3 dimensions of practice. So I would like to have you talk about this. And also I want to say, yeah, since I was combining various modalities in my work before I met you, but since I met you and since I started to work with you and since I went through your training, it definitely changed a lot my approach working with clients and myself. And so somehow a lot of Killaby inquiries and a lot of these things are embedded in my work with people, and it's extremely helpful. And also I know for you, this is not like theoretical. What we are going to talk today is based on, like, let's say thousands, 15, 20,000 of working with people one-on-one and applying this teaching on yourself to heal yourself. I mean, beyond, let's say, awakening and finding out who you are and letting go of compulsions and addictions, but healing yourself for very serious suicide level chronic pain and contractions. And it seems like you have success, and I see this in my work with people using your work, success in this area of mental health, as well as chronic pain and unusual diagnosis connected with mental health and emotional stuff. Anyway, so here we are, the map, and you are going to put it up soon. So from what I understand from you, this is somehow, it's a dynamic compass. It's a path, how to not bypass your suffering as you are pursuing esoteric spiritual goals, how to not bypass various things, and how to, it's almost like as a correction, a course correction of your previous work when you were pointing to awareness and witnessing and meditation, or as a correction to include now all the human experience from the point of view of real inner freedom and reaching some kind of full potential and not living somehow, as they said in old times, they will like roast, you will roast a pig, and not to be evenly roasted. So our spiritual work, psychological work, to be evenly roasted, not to have growth here and extremely unconscious in some other areas, you know? So Scott, yeah, if we can give just a little bit of a context or how you want to start this before we go into the 3 dimensions and somehow the 3 dimensions of practices, 3 types of practices that you recommend for people and how they need each other, how they complete each other, how they are all necessary to go deeper, and how each one of them may have some advantages and some shortcomings. Somehow not one is better than the other. It's kind of a way to, yeah, to go deeper in making the unconscious conscious.
Okay, so one thing you said there, I thought we could just come back to, which is it's not really theoretical. And the map, as soon as you look at it, might look like that. And I've actually been turned off by things like that before. Like when I first read Ken Wilber's book, Integral Spirituality, I read about 10 pages and I just shut it because it was so mappy. But as I went back in, it was really rich. Like he really gets it. And so sometimes when we explain this stuff, it sounds mindy. So, but it's not. It really, the map got created after the work. See, so a theory might be, let's create a theory and see if it's true. This is like, I have no idea what's going on. Let's go find out. And now we'll map it out at the end. So that's why I think people can trust it, because it is based on experience, not just theory. Although there's some theory there, but it works itself out. Even if it looks like theory, you start to see, oh, yeah, that's not theory. That's my nervous system seeking safety, right? It's not theory. It's what's happening. So that's part of it, is just necessity.
Of a map, it's actually not theoretical. We take the allegory of a map. It's a traveler, a guide who went through the mountain, went on the other side, there was another mountain, and now you end up in a plain where it's nice. And then he wrote a map for people to come. Yeah, that's very practical, the whole map thing.
Right. I think you and I see that, but maybe people will, look at it and go, oh, this is too much mind stuff. But so that's how it was developed, out of necessity, out of my bypassing. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing, is the reason that I end up being sort of critical of these teachings and practices, because I had to be critical of my own teaching and practice. And so we're probably going to talk about that. There's going to be a critical eye that we're turning towards here in these interviews, I think, towards practices that might need correcting, as you say. So that's kind of a good setup. Would you like me to put the map up, or anything else you want to?
Let's put the map on. And also, yeah, there's one of the senior facilitator, Toshi, I think, who helped with this, with his, I really like it. Like, it looks like a matrix diagram. One of my clients said, look, this looks like the map towards the ultimate fishing hole.
Yeah, right. Well, before you ask a question, Mihai, something just occurred to me because of what you already asked me, which is oh God, did I just lose that thought? Something about just okay, so what makes it experiential, for example, is before we get into it, but the first dimension is about just be with what is. So that's meditation, mindfulness, or just resting as awareness and allowing things to be as they are. That right there, from the beginning, I'm losing my thought here about this. This is a really good thought. For some reason, I'm losing it. Let me just sit here for a second, Mihai. Oh, yeah, this is what it is. To be with what is, you have to be careful with, because what this map is showing us is that fear is running, the need for safety is running things automatically. So in be with what is, your system will likely default to what's emotionally safe. This is why part of the critical eye is being turned towards the be with what is as a final thing. It's a great practice, but as a final practice, it might not be because of how our system just unconsciously goes to safety when we're not looking and seeing the deeper programming here, that we find, and the repression that's guiding all that to stay safe. So that's what I want to say from the beginning, because there'll be people who will say, a map to what is? Are you serious? Like almost indignant about, or like self-righteous about it. But yeah, because being with what is how our system goes to safety and bypasses, just trusting our own. And, people might not want to hear that because we like the whole thing about intuitive and organic, allowing things to be that paradigm, which is really brilliant and helpful. But I'm here to rain on that parade a little bit because of the way that the system seeks safety right there. So maybe that would be good for anybody who's automatically saying a map to what is. Yeah, because when you follow what is, you tend to go to what's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say this at the beginning, and if I could kind of somehow respectfully slow you down and maybe go into just the first one and then and the second one. But what I want to say, this is a map or a pathway for people are interested in awareness-based practices. Yeah, so there are all kind of paths out there, shamanic paths, there are devotional paths, there are all kind of paths that may work, that worked for people. But we are focusing now, Scott and I, on these awareness-based methodologies, like things that many of us resonate, like Buddhist meditation, Zazen, Vipassana, Fourth Way, non-duality, Advaita Vedanta. So as well as things like modalities that are therapeutical, psychological modalities that are awareness-based using mindfulness. And yeah, based on what you say, I mean, somebody will have such an objection. To me, it reveals a deep ignorance and it's just cherry picking some pointers, be with what is. We are talking here about clearing one's nervous system and one's mind and body and heart from decades of conditioning and ancestral programming. Mm-hmm. So just simplifying it, saying like, be with what is, this is very ignorant, actually. There's a lot of chemical, neuronal, mental, emotional, behavioral changes that need to happen. So I'm not even buying that, being with what is. But so first dimension, you are talking about that, and this is the beginning. Somebody comes to you in order to go deeper work. It's important too. So the first dimension exercises or recommended tools would be to all with the purposes of, because many people, there is no first dimension at all. So, there's no dimension of practice, there's no practice. So first dimension would be like learning how to watch the breath, so we are not checked out in the mind, in the past and future all the time, and quieting the mind and observing the, scanning the inner body, Eckhart Tolle practices, yeah? Scanning the inner body, Vipassana practices, like noticing inner sensations, energies moving, observing that, wow, they are moving, they are changing, and I'm aware of them and try not to resist them. So what they call in Vipassana, equanimity, developing equanimity, watching, allowing, all of this is essential first dimension practice, going more into a free style of meditation, like no particular scanning or focus of concentration, more like they call it like a welcoming, welcome the totality of the present moment, thoughts, sensations, sounds. So all of this, yes, being with what is, right? As well as going deeper into who am I? This using a prompting question somehow to, okay, who am I? What is aware right now? I hear the traffic. What is hearing the traffic? So all of this, like Ramana Maharishi, the great non-dual direct path, finding out. Yeah, so these are all first dimension practices. And also the first dimension starts from basic, like, hey, can you just watch your breath for a moment and feel into your body? Oh, I checked out. Okay, can you come back here? Feel the wind on your face. Oh, I feel anxiety. Okay, well, what is it? Can you watch it? So from basic stuff to deep sensing the aware background, being, you know, as they say, being aware of the awakeness that is here. So there's a wide range here. This basically one can spend I spent decades here. And you spend decades here. It's very rich, and it is wonderful. I mean, it is. You should spend years here, right?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, can I say one more thing about that? Even as you go into second and third dimension practice,
I want to stay with the first more.
okay.
Let's stay with the
Yeah.
first a little bit.
Yeah. But it's important. The point is, yeah, it's key. It's foundational. Resting and being with what is.
Yeah, and you when you have new clients or when you have new trainees, we can't look into trauma. We can't do this without some ability to witness and not to get sucked into it. Yeah, so this mindfulness. So, okay, Scott, tell us, okay, great benefits of that. Like what would be, okay, let's slow it down here more. What would be the great benefits of engaging and spending, let's say, hours a week doing these first dimension practices from your experience?
A lot of benefit. So just like you say, like just being able to notice thoughts coming and going, or notice feelings coming and going. The benefit of that is you start to see that you don't have to like hook into the things coming and going. You can just let it all come and go. And there's more of a recognition over time for many of us that I'm not that stuff coming and going. That freedom starts to show up with a peace from just observing and allowing. And so you can actually take that like really lightly. Like if you were just a meditator, you could just sit down for about an hour a day and just cultivate that experience of, you know, calm abidance or allowing everything to be. And there's great benefit in that. And if you even took that practice of meditation into your life to like let it be a living, you know, meditation or awareness practice, you might even, like I experiences like deep states of realization eventually, where you start to question everything that is arising and seeing that it doesn't create any separation. Like the direct experience as you stay in it, you could even go into deep states of like non-dual, even with just first dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great benefit. And non-dual realization obviously is a really great benefit. But also just before that, there's just benefit for humans. Like you can help anxiety, depression. A lot of the effects of the repression and trauma can be put to rest, just resting and allowing things.
Yeah. Even in psychology now, mindfulness is which is some way of saying this kind of witnessing presence, although they're not concerned that what is witnessing, but this quality of witnessing and the here and now experience, it's an essential part of some type of addiction, the working with addiction, with urges, with anxiety, with, you know, in the dialectic behavioral therapy, in the cognitive behavioral therapy. This becomes almost mainstream now. And regular therapists talking about teaching client mindful relaxation techniques. And so even at the level of just mental health, it is now mainstream. Also, as you were saying on your path, and I was doing I was meditating a lot. Then we start to bring this more portable. You were doing that, I was doing this in the fourth way to what's called self-remembering, to practice self-remembering, or Eckhart Tolle will say coming back to the now, being aware of the now experience, returning to the beingness. as often as possible, as much as possible. This is already advanced for new people, for many people, and this is important to do. First dimension. What I like about the map is that, you know, KI or you, Scott Killaby, you offer first dimension exercises, but also other paths. I mean, this, what I like about this map is that it's across various teachings. It's not just a KI map. You can check your own practices from various things and see where is there. Yeah.
Yeah. I've even suggested good teachings and practices for first dimension. I've listed that I think good teachers for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely, it's not just about KI. I think it is a map that can help
Right.
anybody. Yeah.
I recommend people to study Vipassana and to study Eckhart Tolle and to study Adyashanti and to study Rupert Spira, that are like healthy, very solid first dimension practice. And when we say that, we are not belittling it. This is just awesome, essential teachings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
So
my 7 books have like 70% of it is first dimension pointing. So obviously there's benefit that even I see in it. So I'm definitely not saying
yeah.
there's a limitation to it, but that doesn't change the benefit.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the, and we'll go now into the limitations and the disadvantages, but one thing which I want to bring here, there is a danger, is that the seeker or the practitioner, we start to believe that this is the ultimate.
Yes.
And this is the only thing you know, the only thing you need. And why? Because Rupert or somebody, some teacher is very seemingly awake, and he's probably is very awake and at peace. Or Ramana, I mean, the great saints, yeah. I'm like, and they say, Nisargadatta, they just say, hey, just see that the ego is not real and just witness the mind coming and going. That's all you need to do. So there's this some kind of this subtle but not so subtle message that's all you need, and everything will unravel and the illusion will dispel as you stay as what you are. And so I get this sense of like, whoa, this is the ultimate, there's nothing else, it's this direct path. Everything else, it's a little less, it's mind stuff or psychology, and no, you guys do that, but I'm with the ultimate here, with some ego, with spiritual superior, arrogant, and all that, right?
Yes. I'm so glad you brought this up. Keep going.
And here we have, you know, if you look at the map, there's this circle there on the left, visible conscious landing. So can you talk a little bit? So, okay, there's all great benefits here, but there's a lot of issues here. There are stuff that is not arising. And the stuff that is creates the most suffering for us, we don't know what that is even. Let's talk about the disadvantages and limitations of just first dimension practices.
Can we just talk about shadows first? Because I think that's a really good one to see the limitation of first dimension. And I think that the way that Ken Wilber explains it helps me understand it and explain it. I'll just say what he says, is that a shadow is a disowned aspect of yourself. So when you're meditating or in awareness, you can't really witness it in a way that you can witness other things because you've completely disowned it. It really does look like it's somebody else's.
Yeah.
And so you haven't owned it yet. And so as you try to witness it, it doesn't really work because you haven't connected the mind and body within yourself around that. So it's somebody else's. So it's like, it's not even yours. So you have to own it so that in your own mind, you recognize you have it because there's a mind body connection there, then you can work with. So again, shadows are a big holdout, I think. And that's why I'm encouraging, really, I'm not a teacher for the people outside of KI, but for the people inside of KI, I say definitely do shadow work early for that reason, because parts of yourself are already disowned, shadowed out when you get here. And the way that the awareness pointing or the practices are, they're really not geared to own that without some process, in addition to just being with what is. Something else has to happen there.
And I work with people, and this, even the term shadow, it's a little esoteric. So it's a Jungian term which refers to this phenomena of some aspect of myself, part of myself that I hide, repress, or deny. I don't like it, and I don't want to see it. And somehow I hide it from myself, but somehow then I see it just like the shadow. I see my shadow, and I think that some other guy who is attacking me, or he has a problem with me. So I see that part of myself I don't like, hide, repress, deny in other people. And then I'm triggered by them. I'm triggered by them, and they are my enemy, and I judge them, and I'm activated, and I lose my zen. I'm like, yeah, I'm meditating at peace, but now all these people are wrong. And so, yeah, that's important clarification. Like, I'm secretly vain, and I want attention, but I don't like about myself. So I'm trying not to do that. But then I'm very triggered by people who are vain and they are seeking attention, or I'm needy, and I don't like that. And then I see all these people needy. I mean, yeah, this can lurk there in 1 month Vipassana retreat, and all this judgment all the time, everybody. I mean, it happened to me and stuff. And the shadows, they create triggers, and then I'm spinning into this thought, and I'm getting identified, and I don't know why. Because my being present to the present and observing my thoughts, those thoughts, they are hidden, so they don't come. So I'm totally deluded. I mean, I can be totally deluded by my own ego and stuff. So shadows and triggers, the same triggers here. Triggers can be connected to shadows. Triggers can be connected with other things. Right? So meditating, all is this good, and I finish, I go, and my girlfriend just says something. She doesn't even say anything. She just looks away, and like angry, and or I'm like afraid, and then I'm shutting down, and Buddha is out. Buddha is out. Right?
What did you say the last sentence about Buddha?
Well, Buddha is out.
Yeah.
Awakened. I lost Buddha. I lost Buddha.
Right. Well, we'll talk more about triggers, but we're not showing people the rest of the map. We're really going slowly, which is good, because I think this is really good the way you're doing this. But I guess the thing to think about triggers before we go deeper with it is that part of what we're being triggered on isn't even conscious in first dimension quite often. And that's the trauma research. I think it's important to say again, which is like, so when I first got to these teachings, I then also bought into the Holy Grail thing. Like, this is all you need. Rest and be with everything. That's all you need. But for me, the triggers would happen, and when they would happen, even after the shift, I didn't really see what I was believing. And so I felt it. So there's that trigger that comes to the surface in that first dimension awareness. But now I know 10 years later from the trauma research that the programming doesn't arise there. I always saw that, but you know how we bamboozle ourselves in a way, we don't put two and two together. So for years I kept seeing triggers arise, but there's a lot of peace. And so the triggers would be like, every now and then something would come up. And I at first had difficulty even seeing what the identity or the belief was in some of those triggers. So that was an issue with first dimension right off the bat, because a lot of these triggers carried with them this hidden identity, like a deficiency story right in there. And that seemed to be hidden for me at first, even though it's part of identity, it was hidden. And then, that was the trigger. And also I noticed that identity had shadows with it. So whatever the identity, the separate self is, I just noticed, like, for example, if the identity is I'm good, there might be shadows there, like in some way. I don't know, whatever it is, there could be some shadow there from that. So these two things are important in first dimension, is to see, I don't want to talk about repression yet, but to just to see though, in first dimension practice, that you're having difficulty really transmuting shadows.
Mhm.
Just notice that you have difficulty. That's all you have to notice, that the shadows keep coming and you don't really get to the root of it. It's difficult. And then the triggers, even though your triggers, you'll start to, when you rest and allow things, it's great. Again, the benefit of that is just let things be as they are. But what I think you'll find if you stay in these practices is that particular triggers will keep happening, even if there's more space between them. You're still believing something and it's still coming up, no matter how many times you see its emptiness when it comes up.
Mhm.
You might see, oh, there's nothing there, and then it goes away. But then just watch. So watch for your triggers and your shadows returning, even despite years of very skillful practice. And then that can tune us into it right there, the bypassing.
Yeah, so the first dimension practices, it's almost like we are seeing just the top of the iceberg, or just like you have an ocean, just the surface of the water, and just a little bit below, whatever pops out. And yeah, and we can be very clear that, hey, this is not me, this thought, this is not me, but we don't know the causes and of what happened there, and we miss out. Yeah, and basically deep presence and ability to witness and stay in the here and now, which from one angle improved my life and diminished a lot of my suffering. Yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Can coexist with, I'm still getting triggered, I have chronic pain, and I have some mysterious tension in my gut that I try to witness and allow, and it's not me, and appears in me, and it's, yeah. And then also I have some addictions, multiple addictions, but I'm aware of it. And it's okay, you know, and maybe not think about it too much. And I could actually feel often lonely and depressed, and sometimes afraid when I go somewhere, right? And yeah, so yeah, and then I go to one of my first dimension teachers because something starts to be painful. I was like, hey, I keep having this relational pattern here, and I keep having this situation. It keeps happening. This is my sixth girlfriend where this is happening. What shall I do, teacher? And the teacher says, well, some of them can say, hey, these relationships are not relevant. We don't talk about that, you know, just remember who you are, stay with that. Now, other teachers, they would say, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. This is what you are not. You see, you keep going along with what you are not. This is your separate self. Can you just see through it? You need to see through it, let it go. You are beautiful presence, nothing's wrong with you. All this happened to me, yeah, from people that I respect, man, they are awesome. But it's just, God, it's not working, because still is happening with the seventh girlfriend. Fuck. So,
Well,
yeah.
can I stop and say something real quick? Because I think there's a question or a topic there that's coming out of you. But before you do that, I have to say this, because what I get is when people hear Scott Killaby showing up differently, where I'm turning the critical eye towards these teachings and myself, I have gotten people who are triggered at me more than you would probably think. I don't even share as much of it is, because that hits a button for people. But I want to stop the presses right now, and I want you to hear what Mihai is doing. I didn't teach him that.
Yeah.
I don't teach people that. So this is not about me. It's like, this is what happens when you do KI. His discernment coming online is just what happens. And so I just want you guys to see that, for those who still think that you're going to make it about me, because it's not. It's like, this is what happens when you actually you have to turn that critical eye towards things, because if you don't, you'll continue missing stuff. You have to.
Yeah, so, you know, I was on the, you know, Awakening Mountain, and seeker of methods for 20 years, man. And so, and I finally find after going through all kind of teachers, I find some that I truly think that they, whatever they've done, they are free. And I like that, yeah. But then as I'm becoming friends with them, and also I work as a psychotherapist. I know trauma. I know people was in the war. I know some people were abused, they were beaten, they were raped. There were all these problems, yeah.
Yeah.
I asked this non-dual teacher, I won't mention name, about trauma. They say this is selfing. Trauma is selfing. Don't go there. That's what you are not. If you go there, it's going to be forever. So there's no point going there. To whom it appears. I debate with this guy, and then I realized actually he doesn't know what trauma is. And it was like, and still I love him, and he's very wise. Go another teacher, all the examples I described, they are from my own experience. I bring multiple times relational patterns, but almost embarrassingly, because people don't bring that. It's almost like there's this unspoken agreement, like in a family. You know, like in a family, there are unspoken rules.
Yeah.
Unspoken agreement in this Sangha, we don't ask those questions, but we ask questions about, is consciousness limited? Is it, yeah, we ask those, but we don't ask those. Anyway, I bring things, I'm kept slapped with radical non-duality. I'm not that, I'm already that. There's nothing wrong with me, it's not real. Why do you keep going along with that? You see, just okay. So, and that was frustrating, man. And at the same time, because I loved them so much and I grew so much from them, I didn't trust myself. I mean, I'm a student, fuck, right? I'm like, oh, okay. So I need to meditate more. I need to explore more first dimension practices and all that. So anyway, as I found other things and I started to develop my own fucking understanding, I solved a lot of these things. I solved a lot of these things, but with some other type of work, you know? And I needed to understand this to allow myself to do other type of work, which the second dimension, we can go there. I consider that's lower. That's more like psychology, that it is not the direct path. Yeah, and the third dimension, I didn't even know that it exists. Yeah, so maybe we go into the second dimension with the ideas that, okay, we have those practices, those ability to witness even throughout the day, even there's a shift of I'm not Mihai, I'm that which is aware, but I still have stuff, chronic pain, addiction, pot, judgment, triggers, loneliness, depression, not very strong. I'm pretty good. I'm good. Yeah, I can teach people. I can work with people. I can help people. I can write a book maybe. Okay, right?
Yeah.
So, but somehow, okay, in your discovery, in order to find those, you know, the red lines, one needs to respectively go into some other type of practices. In order to, so the second dimension, the quality of it, the signature is that I'm prompting things up, right? I need to do something to open the hood, to prompt something. It's like there are creatures lurking in the bushes and I'm in the clearing. I hear a rustling, but I don't see anything, right? We need something.
Couple things to say about this. The stuff that's rustling is identification, and that's why it's relevant to non-dual and to, you know, because you can dismiss it if you don't see it that way, I think. You think, oh, that's just whatever that is, but you're identified with that. You actually think that you are that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so I think it's relevant. And just a couple of more points before we get into second dimension here, because the people in first dimension, it's really hard to see it. But here's, again, just a laundry list of things to look for if you're in first dimension, because there's nothing that's going to come up that's going to say you're bypassing. Nothing will say that to you. And your teacher won't either, because their teacher is not going to point out their own bypassing. Okay.
One of his teachers said to me, I asked him about bypassing, and he said, yeah, just bypass it, because that's no, he really, I mean, it was funny and there was
Yeah.
nice Zen moment, but he said, yeah, because it's not real. You totally want to go around this and just let it go. You know, it's like he told me straight up to do that.
Right. No, I get it. Right. So here, for the people in first dimension, again, just look for the shadows that remain, even if they get less, because Mihai just said that, like, hey, I get in the second dimension, I'm not doing too bad, a few addictions here, but it's not heroin, or it's like, yeah, there's some triggers that come up, but I just rest with that. I can see that's not me. And so I'm the ground of being, feeling pretty good about that path. But look for how your shadows, chronic pain, body contraction, mental health issue, triggers remain. That's the thing. I think that's maybe all that we can say to the first dimension people, because you can't really see anything else there. You can only see those visible effects. So if they continue on and you drag them down into second dimension practice, notice that all that is the red. And I'm not going to try to jump ahead, but what we're trying to tell you, it's fear. Fear of feeling this, fear of feeling that, fear of doing whatever else. So you want to pay attention, I think, from the beginning, at least if you don't get to the frozen fear or the repression or the trauma right away, at least know that that's what it is, because otherwise you're operating in the dark. Why do I keep seeing shadows? It has nothing to do with fear. If you don't see that, why, you don't know where you're going. If you don't see why all this is happening, why?
Yeah, let's see. You're going to a third dimension, Scott. I need to stop.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So even in the first dimension, there are some aspect of the teaching. They say you cannot be free from what you are not conscious of. So we are trying to be conscious of this. They say if what you are not aware of has power over your life. They say that. So also they say in Advaita Vedanta, they say, okay, there's a me thought, there's the me feeling, and this creates this sense of me, the identity, the sense of separation is the me thought, the me feeling. Mm-hmm. And they say that as you do this non-dual exploration, the thought aspect diminishes and the mind is more clear, but you still have a residual or feeling of separation in the body. This right. Rupert Spira talks that, Francis Lucille, and right. Ramana Maharishi. The next level is to clearing your body. They call it post-awakening sadhana. Okay, I'm awareness, but for 47 years, I lived as Joe, the body, with all the programs. So they say you need to clear your body and your emotional body from the sense of the me feeling, yeah, which creates the sense of separate self, yeah. So at the same time, they say that, hey, see through the separate self, there's no real. But how can I see through it? I can't lump it like this wholesale. That's why I see in some teachings, they lump it wholesale. And even they dismiss it like, well, that's your separate self, you are not that, so that's... Yes. So basically the second dimension is a way to really investigate the separate self, which is hiding. And what I mean by separate self in psychology, it will be, what's the separate self made of? It's made of, okay, in my case, okay, let's make it real here. I am different sub-identities. From one angle, I am better. I know better than you guys. I'm better. Hidden underneath is that I'm not good enough. It's not safe to be vulnerable. I have to hide. I have to be careful. Other people have like, there's something wrong with me. I'm seeking approval. I'm unlovable. So all of these core limiting beliefs in psychology, limiting beliefs that have a feeling component, we can't just lump them all in separate self. You are not that. I mean, maybe Ramana did it like there when he fell down and whatever in the cave, but I couldn't, and anybody I know couldn't.
Right. Right. Everybody I know, right? Yeah.
Right. So the second dimension is to have certain tools and techniques, both from KI as well as other methodology, to make the unconscious more conscious and to see what, right? In the second dimension, in the beginner KI, we want people, I'm going towards, hey, let's find out what are your deficiency identity. We need to find them. We can't let them be vague. We need to find them and find when they were formed, how, in connection to, it wasn't just I was in my crib and I developed this, I'm wrong. No, something happened with mommy, with daddy, with grandma, with whatever. Maybe I pass it to you a little bit here and stay with the second dimension if you can.
Yeah. keep me there. Yeah, I will. I think I can slow it down with something right here for the second dimension. I was saying in a video this morning is how I experienced it was, I did the first dimension practice, there were realizations there, and the separate self, like you, part of it was in my body, and then so I was triggered from time to time from it, very unconscious identity. And so if you imagine there's a line that doesn't really exist, it's the line that we call the repression barrier, or what I call it. It's just like the stuff, I won't get into it, but there's stuff below the line we can't see. Let's just say that. Right. So, but every now and then in a trigger, it was like the mind part of the identity would almost come forth, as I said, but it really wouldn't until I prompted it up. Like we say, prompting, second dimension. So I started prompting. In other words, what does that trigger mean about who I am right there as a prompt? And then finally, it's like, here's the line. It'd be like, I'm unlovable. It would just barely show its face. And that was very peculiar to me. Like, why do I have to even dig to find what I think I am? You know, that made me question first dimension early, really early. Like, why am I seeing this thing just barely show its head? But this is actually very, very close to the source of the suffering. The I'm unlovable, but not much is showing. So then, you know, the second dimension work that we developed through the years, and even the second dimension KI, is really working to make that more conscious, that identity, like you say. So I won't go into the tools, but essentially we have a way to bring up the programming, the rest of it that's hiding under the line around the identity, bring it into awareness. And then the more we expose that into awareness, the more we see the emptiness of that identity. But I can't see it if it's not coming above the line. In other words, you said the me feeling. What a great set of words, because in those triggers, it feels like there's a me there, but it's a me feeling. There's a mind-body connection though. And so when the mind is offline, that's what I mean by it's below the surface. So it's just me feeling, me triggered, me wounded. But here with prompting, I could finally see what that me was. And so that's another thing that you just said. Thank you for these great topics that you're bringing up, which is general is a part of how we might bamboozle ourselves. So if I say there's no self, or I start investigating self in a very general way, it might be that I miss a lot. For example, I might miss an aspect of that that's already hiding, the unlovable that doesn't want to come up. And so if I just say that in first dimension awareness, be with what is, there's no self, then that never gets processed because that's right below the surface. And so I think that's really helpful for people out there who think that first dimension is all that you need. Just hearing that right there, not even on identity.
Yeah.
On that you need more often.
Yeah, it denies the existence of the subconscious and the unconscious, and they're great. I mean, psychologists, like history of psychology, they discovered, they discovered also like this generational transmission of information, and science now discovered this with rats. there's information that happened to the grandfather rat that is present in the grandson rat, although they haven't experienced it. So this, yeah, it's naive, and it's in order to poke the open the hood, it requires some special tools. You can't think about it. I mean, journaling can maybe, free flow association, maybe they can bring something, but now we are talking a whole other method, a whole other set of practices to unpack Ziploc files. Yeah, even when you say, you know, I'm unlovable, or for me it was like I can't be free. I can't be free. It's not safe to be me. Yeah, this is more like a folder, like a title of the folder, and it's in that there are sub files with memories and hundreds of situations. And then going into the third dimension here is that it was like I was trauma happening to me, and intense emotions and intense deep woundedness happened to me that later developed this, I can't be myself, I have to be careful, I'm unlovable, I need approval, I need what would they think of me, all of this me identity, you know.
Well, now you're going into the third dimension a little bit, but it's like it's hard not to.
I'm going there because basically all the shit, all the ego that we are trying to discover and unpack in the second dimension, all the patterns and the addictions and the beliefs and the strategic adaptations to get straight A's, to be funny, to hide, to whatever, to be strong, they are stems and flowers of something that happened at a very almost non-verbal level that was hurtful and intense.
Emotional.
And that's the third dimension. We're not going there yet, but the roots of the magma, all that comes from there.
Yes. So we'll go there in a second, but there's more to talk about with the second dimension, slowing it down, because I think this is a good place to slow it down, because a lot of the bypassing, I think, happens here too, very innocently. So if we could slow that down a little bit. I don't know if you have something to go into, but can I say something real quick just to see if it sparks something? The place that I didn't go in the second dimension practice was towards the good, positive identities, because there wasn't a real reason to. It's like there's not any visible suffering over it, and I'm getting benefit, utility. So basically, people like me. Why inquire into that? And so even though as a teacher, I might have said, yeah, look at that, that wasn't very skillful, because that's coming, again, like you say, from something below the line. We're putting forth that identity for a good reason. There are roots to that story. So if I just explore the good identity as if I don't know where it's coming from, it is like a lot of this is like picking up the weeds in a garden. You're not getting to the roots, and so you're likely gonna, even if you do question positive identity, unless you understand where that's coming from, you're going to be questioning that a lot, because it's going to be produced a lot over and over. Good, spiritual. So I missed all that. I just missed it. And I didn't know how really to look at it. And again, if I would have looked at just the story, I would have missed the darkness under that was producing it. So that was my bypass. And some people are going to find themselves in that one. Like there's a motivation to inquire into the negative identities because they hurt, but the positive ones, maybe not so much. There might be an assumption there's no negative suffering, so to speak, painful suffering with the positive, and that is an incorrect assumption. I learned it the hard way. You can't be that and not pay the price. There's something there underneath that manifests as illness, or for my example, chronic pain or something. But if anybody can see themselves in just that part of the bypass, you're farther along than I was in the path of not bypassing.
Yeah, so Scott, here it's almost like we are going, maybe using a metaphor of the ocean, we are somewhere between 30 meters under the water to 100 meters, where there's all these creatures and type schools of fish and all of that, and different monsters or different monsters that actually are very beautiful and very praised by everybody. And actually they have their roots and the seeds deeper, actually, in the third dimension. They have the roots and seeds at the deeper level. I understand why you want to do that, because that's where it starts, but we are kind of going reverse, right? And you mentioned this thing that I like, this in the fourth way, they call it, they said some people have this type of ego, they call it false self, false personality. What I like about fourth way, they were not hesitant to study thoroughly the ego. They were not just dismissing it wholesale. And so there's some people have this very pernicious kind of false identity of, it's called mechanical goodness, unconscious goodness. We can call it the good boy shadow, the good boy, or the peacemaker. You know, I'm very agreeable. I avoid conflict. I am not angry. I'm not stirring the boat. I'm good. I'm doing good things, and I'm good to people, and I'm helping everybody. And even if I'm tired and I don't really want to, or I'm busy, or I don't want to, but I am going to do it. I can't say no. Can't put boundaries. Underneath, I'm very afraid. Actually, I'm afraid, and something happened to me that was scary. And I learned that if I am pulling that shit up, I'm so good, then it's more safe. And underneath, I'm actually very fucking pissed, man, about this thing. And I don't even know. I don't know it. But sometimes when I'm driving, I have this road rage. I'm talking about this. These are people that I know. These are clients, and you know them, probably like 50. And I know in myself, you know. So as a good boy, and in your case, that was like really a core signature, and it can kill you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can. Yeah, and I guess the only thing to say, because I think what we're doing here is we're just illuminating for people. If you see it in yourself, catch it, you know, because we're just trying to share with you how if you miss it, there's a price to pay. Is what I'm trying to say. There's usually some price to pay. We can't really just bypass in the way the teacher said and get away with it. Like just bypass that. There is usually some price to pay for that. And this one can be chronic pain or illness. Can be. The good boy. Even Dr. Sarno said that. He said like a lot of his patients he was treating them for chronic pain from anger repression. A lot of them were like, they grew up, I'm the good one in the family. I'm the one that keeps the family together. You know, you can put your shit on me. I won't say anything. You can impose on me. You can obligate me and make me feel guilty. You can just shit on me all day long.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say anything.
And then I'm a good listener too. I'm a good listener. I know people like that. And people come to this person and they unburden, and he's truly empathetic, and also like people, they, you know, I have clients, let's say I'm repairing them something and they pay me less, they don't pay me. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, I understand. And I'm getting resentment, and then that's yeah, some false virtue. That's a difficult type of ego to dismantle. But also here we have the other ones, you know, like all the other core deficiency stories and strategic adaptation, you know, hiding, overcompensating, unlovable, unworthy, something wrong with me. Now, if those are not explored, then I attract partners and relationships that are going to mirror back to me that, oh, you know, treat me well. Because they have to confirm that I'm unlovable or I'm not worth shit. and sabotage, self-sabotage. I can't be really successful in my life because subconsciously I believe that. So those are very important to explore, and we have certain practices here. Like before I came to KI, I studied Hakomi. Hakomi, there was like going inside and there's something in my chest, mining. There was this, actually was called mining, actually, to see what does it say. If it were to say something, this tightness in my chest, what would it say? Would there be some memory attached to it? What would it be? What does it mean about me, this thing? In KI, we have this mining. So basically, unpacking the contraction or the emotion, finding the mental aspect. In KI, we have a lot of like basic KI, which it's essential. The third level KI, the third dimensional KI, is based on the basic KI. This reverse inquiry. In Hakomi, they had this is called probes. Like, I feel I'm okay. If I say to myself, you know, there's nothing wrong with me at all. So I'm totally okay just the way I am. You know, for most people, that will come a little, some unease and some tension or some hell no, or memory of. So these are meant to flush out the creatures out of the hiding so we can bring them to awareness of awareness, right?
Yeah, and we do a lot of that in second dimension KI. Yeah. So this is really important to be able to prompt things up, not just for identity, but you also mentioned some other things. It's not just identity. There are other strategies that you said that they're involved. We start to see more of those, I think, as we do the somatic work.
Yeah.
A lot of those might elude us in first dimension until we get down some of the programming. So there's more insight available with second dimension. It can be a deeper, even sense of embodiment of presence. Like there are many people who have come to this work who feel a deep sense of embodied presence, but there's just some holdouts somewhere. You know, they went really deep with first and second dimension, but there's certain things they couldn't see. I don't know how much you want to talk about safer emotions, because that's another topic with KI. We good to go to that?
Yeah, maybe let's take here with second dimension a bit more. So here we start to find core deficiency stories, core limiting programs, as well as these were developed in childhood in relation to a family dynamic. There was hurt in there. And there was the message, you know, you go to some good psychotherapist, sooner or later, you're going to find out what's the message I got from the dynamic with my mom. What's the message I got about the world and what it means to be you know, these are the messages which are not just mental, they're full of pain and emotions and stuff. Mm-hmm. And here we identify and explore strategic identities. Some false identity that helped me to survive, to be more funny, to hide, to do everything right, to be a peacemaker, to not have boundaries, to actually not let anybody in, to just self-reliant. So all of these, we bring awareness to them, and we identify the utility, you know, and we start to do this. Basically, this is now somatic processing. It's no talk therapy here, although it can be just talking, not closed eye, but slowing it down, unpacking it. There's the mind, the body, linking the mind-body connection. And in KI, we have all the core tools: reverse inquiry, utility inquiry, vulnerability inquiry. These are to make more aware the emotional aspect. Some of the tools are for the mental aspect. Some of the tools are to illuminate the emotional aspect, to unpack core memories that reveal core messages.
Okay. Let me say something about utility, because that's a I think that's another development of KI that can help people. Like in second dimension, we start talking about utility inquiry, which is when you first get to KI. And what we find is like with any belief or program, including deficiency stories, separate self, hidden with that is our unconscious utilities, what we call them, which is like, this is what I get out of believing that. I don't just believe it for no reason. I'm getting something, the personal identity gets something out of it. And that helps us, I think, start to see the difference between what is real and what's not real, like what we're believing versus what we really are when we find these utilities. So the only thing I want to say about the utilities is, for example, if I have my unlovable thing, if I would have had KI back in those days, I would have said, what do I get out of believing I'm unlovable? Probably what would have come up would be somehow like, this is how I get love, strangely. But also it would be probably something like, I was protecting myself, because unlovable is small and you can just sort of protect yourself in that by not being big, by not taking chances, by not stepping out, by not expressing love, by just basically playing it safe in life, because you think of yourself as small. There's also, so there's fear. So there's fear in the identity. We're afraid to be our real self. So out of fear, we become this small self, and that utility is with it. I am this because that's safer. And there's another angle to that, which is that's safer, then I won't get to it. There's a repression under that. So the identity is safer also with regard to the repressed emotion that's producing that. And so that's why I think we're learning about safety. And that's going to be helpful for all of us, because fear is running the show in the end. And we need to know where we're landing for safety, because we're not processing this fear. Eventually, we want to know those areas, because otherwise we're going to keep landing for safety on the identities.
And this utility is like what was the subconscious benefit of believing something or engaging in some behavior. This is what a child figured it out. So the utilities are created by a 6-year-old in me, or a 4-year-old or a 14-year-old. But actually they are not true now anymore, actually. So it's good to bring up basically you understand the psychology of a 6-year-old. Or some program that I learned, like, don't feel sad. We don't want to feel sad. We don't feel sad. This is going into the depths, but it helped me. That helped my father. That helped my grandfather to not feel sad, and because they didn't have tools, it was overwhelming, and they needed to take care of the family and to keep going. So we start to understand the utility of it in light of it. In this way, you're like, oh, that's not good. So I'm more able to let it go somehow.
Yeah, eventually. But there's fear, and that's the point we're going to be making in the third dimension. Like, what I'm saying is, I think that these identities are connected to the trauma and the fear and the repression. Like, that's what I've been saying. But so one of the issues I think is in second dimension. Again, I don't want to go to third dimension, but if you can see that these are all connected to it, we're trying to tease that. We're trying to, spoiler alert, we're trying to already talk to you about it. We're saying it. But again, if you don't see it, that's the whole thing. If you don't see it, you don't see it. And so, it's fear. Most of this is an emotional issue, is what I see.
Right. These things that we start to study and see and maybe be horrified. Gurdjieff was saying, the more you observe your ego, you're going to be horrified. But this is a good thing. If you're not horrified, it means that you're not seeing quite enough. And you're like, oh my God, what's going on? So whatever you observe there, it actually has its roots somewhere else, in a very deep, primal, survival brain, like primal emotions. But staying more with the second dimension here, there are other practices too, to be fair, that illuminate this thing, like Byron Katie, which is exploring triggers and identifying what beliefs I have I personally like Byron Katie a lot.
Mhm.
However, I don't feel it's somatic enough, and it's staying at some mental level. And I've done Byron Katie with people, and they got it. Oh yeah, this is not true. It's not true. But then if I go back into a body, the body still believes it's true. So I
Sure.
need to do more stuff.
Mhm.
Other things like in men's work, I mean, spent many years with Mankind Project, this clearing, accountability, finding there are some processes actually I'm going to bring to you in the future. When I'm out of accountability, I'm out of integrity with my promises and with other people. There's something lurking underneath. There's somebody else driving the bus, and there are processes to find out who is driving the bus here. Oh, it's the unlovable me who fucked this up to prove that I'm unlovable. So there are all kind of other processes from different modalities to
Yeah.
do shadow work to find some unconscious pattern identities that we respect and we integrate. What I like about KI, we integrate. We are like, hey, whatever works, man, whatever
Well,
works. It's not about me or about Scott.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So in the second dimension, the problem is that, okay, let's talk about this. If you can speak a little bit about this. We are starting to feel and allow certain emotions, but actually they are safer emotions, and there are other emotions we are still we are tricking ourselves. We stay there, but we don't. Yeah. So what are some of the shortcomings? Let's now descend. What are some of the shortcomings of and limitations of just staying at the second dimension?
Okay, well, I like to go back to my own experience to explain this. But so with the good identities there that I wasn't looking at, that kept, I'll just say that kept the anger repression in place, because good, I don't show the anger. So there it is. And then, but with the deficiency stories, the so-called negative identities, what I've noticed now as I look back is that the reason that I say that's safer than for me was repressed anger is because literally in the trigger, I would feel the safer emotions. Literally. Like I remember feeling wounded a lot. Even though I know now that the identity had anger under it, I don't remember that. Yeah, there was frustration, there was some anger in the triggers. It wasn't devoid of anger, but primarily it was a feeling of hurt or woundedness or even fear for me. With these stories, separate self triggers, the anger was just too buried. I never put the anger on anyone. I never processed it. I've never really expressed it or anything. So that's what I mean by safer. Just it's relative. It's not safe. It feels safer when I repress anger. It just feels safer to go to. That's all. And hold on. Therefore, to go to the identities that have the safer emotions, all that is safer. I want to say that.
So it's subjective. You are pointing to this, let's say for your particular configuration, it felt safer to stay with I'm hurt and maybe I'm sad and I'm afraid than to go into like I have this rage and anger. Yeah.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Other men, I know this with men, other people, they go into anger. I'm blowing up all the time. I'm blowing out all the time. But what's underneath? Underneath is that actually I'm hurt, and I'm hurt, and I feel sad and hurt and afraid. But in my family of origin, that was not an option to share. I'm afraid, show my fear to my dad because he was an ex-Navy SEAL. So don't be a pussy. Fuck, come on, give me, So I learned that anger, daddy shows anger, it's okay, anger. But so for somebody else to feel sad is like scary, and anger is like, yeah, I'm comfortable with anger. Yeah.
Yep.
So it depends from people, right?
Yeah. And can I say something about that? Because I'm trying to help people in relationships with that dynamic. Not everybody has that dynamic, but I have. had it in my past, and it's really confusing. It was for me. Is it my I was primarily repressing anger for myself. So therefore, that's not safe, and I don't go there. Period. And so I could go to woundedness or sadness like a rock star, right? That's safe. I'll just go there all day and celebrate it and think I'm really going deep. And then my partner, which I've had partners who are sadness repressors, they are quicker to anger. And then in that anger repression, my self-righteousness was like, you need to be more vulnerable.
Mm,
Okay, that's complete hypocrisy because I'm not doing that.
mm,
The vulnerability for me, to use a word, would have been to go to the anger, the thing that I'm really scared of, because then I would have met my fear, my real fear, vulnerable.
yeah.
But so for me to say that to my partner is, especially with self-righteousness, is a recipe for problems because I'm not even honoring their experience. First of all, I'm not even honoring my experience. My experience is that the anger is not safe. Therefore, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go to what's safe. And then I'm going to ask you to do the same thing.
Mhm.
But when you go to hurt or sadness, that is not safe. That's like me going to anger. And so much confusion happened just from that, just that. And then a shitload of problems from that, not seeing that. Now I see that.
Mhm.
And I had to come out of repression to see it. I don't think you can do this intellectually. I think you actually have to embody, acknowledge these emotions before you really see it. And
Mhm.
there's work involved in that. But
Mhm.
hopefully just hearing it for some people will be like, oh shit, I didn't realize that that's what's going on here,
Yeah.
with my mom or with my partner.
Yeah. So in the second dimension work, we are now also in terms of emotions, we already learned in the first dimension, if we had lucky, this idea that we want to not resist and to welcome the sensation or emotion. Although it's easier said than done, yeah. But in the second dimension, we are like, okay, I'm really training myself to make conscious the emotion, maybe even put a word on it. That's what, in the first dimension teacher, there's some tendency to say, hey, let go of the story, feel the actual sensation, and see that it's just a sensation. And can you welcome it fully? Okay, that's good. But actually, it's not just a sensation. The sensation, it says, I'm sad. I'm sad. And it says also, don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. So, okay. So anyway, in the second dimension, we are like getting more comfortable with feeling it, not just witnessing it. This witnessing emotion, it's a little bit like, hey, yeah, I'm witnessing you, but we are more like, hey, okay, it's okay if it hurts.
Yeah.
I want to feel this
Yeah.
and get more comfortable, getting muddy, and feelings, and also putting a name on it, and develop this ability of to not be afraid to feel. That's very important. If we want to process this shit and be free, we can't. We need to be courageous with the experience. I mean, the experience and training. I became more courageous because I felt some really unpleasant stuff many times, and I'm still here. First dimension is right. I'm not it. Still here.
Mhm.
And more to feel, able to feel more fully. A lot of men and women resistance to feeling. So we are now developing this a lot. Prepares us for the going to the very depths of the woundedness, right?
Right. We're getting there. And I think we're going to get there soon because I know we're coming to the end. But can we mention the red lines quickly? The defaulting to identity deficiency stories would also be to safer emotions. So we're just mentioning the red lines for people to see that you
Yeah.
may actually bring some of these other defaults in, like you still may have shadows of chronic pain at this level. But here we do start to see some new things or some new ways of talking about practice is like just starting to watch now that Mihai and I have talked about this. Now, when you get triggered, just if you're in KI and you're aware of what you do repress, your triggers are very insightful then, because then you can start to see, oh yeah, this is painful, but at least it doesn't contain the repressed emotion. And then, yeah, sadness doesn't feel good, but it's certainly a lot safer than this other thing. And so that's all I'm trying to do is, for some of us in these dimensions, you cannot see what you can't see. So there's no way that we could go into this third dimension and you're going to go, yep, that's clear. The only thing you're going to get at best is intellectual on that. But what you could do is trust your own experience now and see, because your experience now is you haven't made the third dimension conscious. So what can you see and what can you trust? You can trust the defaulting. You can trust that if the identity keeps coming up, you keep defaulting to that, we could be correct. Look for the fact that there might be some repression that doesn't show up there. Some emotion that you don't want to feel, you start to see that might be part of the reason that I'm defaulting. Just seeing it. Keep going there. Looking for safer emotions. See, this might be all that you can do. Like, you just notice it. You don't even maybe know, you haven't felt the rage yet. Don't know anything about it or the hurt, but at least you can see this. And one of the things you can see is, what I say is, like, if you're done on the path, you don't need to proclaim it. And if you do, chances are you might be landing, because that's the ego. Who cares? There's nobody here to be done. If you're saying you're done, just watch for how that might be protecting you. Therefore, many of us, teachers too, bypassed at this level because we've seen the non-dual, there's no I. And that's our default, because we are still scared, but we're not admitting it, of what's under the line. We're human beings. Teachers are fully human beings. So until we've processed the fear, that could still be happening. So how do you see that? Because this is like almost, these are the people that you can't help, frankly, a lot of them, because they're teaching and they're out there and they've created a teaching like I did, however many books. They're not going to adjust this halfway down the road and say, oops, so you have to look for it yourself, because they're not going to point out that to you. They're not going to point out when you're resting as presence that, hey, you're bypassing repression.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it. So you have to do it. You have to be aware of it. So just notice that, here's how you might be aware of it. Before we get into third dimension, is have your non-dual realization, experience that, and then just go take my test on YouTube. Are you repressing emotion? It might be the first way that you see that is a bypass, a landing point. And before that, you might not, because like you say, Mihai, it's just a sensation, right? It's just a sensation. That's not me. Landing, because in the sensation is the repression, for example. It's right there. But it's just a sensation to the non-dual. It's not me.
Yeah, so in the first dimension, there's negativity, I'm allowing, witnessing it and coming back to the present. I've done that so much. And that's not me, and I let it go. The second dimension, I'm triggered. I'm like, oh, wow, this is very interesting stuff. Yeah, I know it's me, but but I'm very curious about it. Oh, I'm triggered because this is like this tension, and it says she wants to change me. Oh yeah, that's how I felt when I was a child all the time. And so I'm believing this thing. So I'm unpacking this thing. So I'm not just constantly trying to manage my trigger. I am seeing and deconstructing the trigger. Yeah. Hey, I want to slow this down. The defaulting, defaulting or landing is a term that Scott uses. Like, okay, we are processing, witnessing stuff, and then we stop somewhere. And how I see in the second dimension, I work with people, we process trauma, we process this or that, we keep coming to, okay, I'm bad. Okay, well, we explore this, and we see that it was formed from childhood, and it's a distortion that is not true, and I am presence. Yeah, but still I feel I'm bad. I still feel I'm bad, or I still feel that I'm alone. This for me. Process this, I process that. But still sometimes comes this as a sense of identity. I'm alone. I'm alone. And I know that I am the presence, and the presence is one with all, is all that is. But honestly, sometimes it feels like I'm alone. So you discovered this, and now we are going to third dimension. And thank you for letting me slow you down here.
Yeah. All right,
So
here we go.
you discover that, okay, even if I'm alone, I can't be myself. All of these programs, they are fueled by just raw emotional things that we avoided our life, and deep hurts. Like, and I'm discovering myself underneath all of these things. I have to hide, I have to be good. Hey, look at me. Hey, don't judge me. Hey, don't be upset with me. Underneath is fear. There's a fear I didn't know I had. Fear. There's sadness. I had to hold it back. Look, be strong. Don't be weak. Don't feel. A lot of like early on, pre-verbal, intense, shocking, energetic experiences in the baby, in the child, that crunched the authenticity somehow. And also witnessing my parents, who they already crunched. And I get this too. Oh, that's how it is. Okay, we all do this. We in my experience, we repress sadness, we repress fear, yeah, and I have to be in a box, and I don't even know what's happening, and I'm not safe, and I have to hide. And so third dimension is where it all began.
Yes. And so let's throw all the dimensions up there just for a second, since now we've gone through it. So I'd like to just let everybody see the fear, because we start to really work with frozen fear. As you know, we're working with that now in third dimension. But if you could just see the fear line and how it's responsible for all the landing and the defaulting, and really it's behind a lot, it's the suffering, because our defaulting is we default to safety again because of childhood programming. We think we have to, even though that programming is not relevant in the same way, we're still doing it. So we have to contend with it in the spiritual path. That's the whole point of the red lines. And where it gets down to the third dimension is we're working with frozen fear. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to introduce it. Meaning, when we were a kid, it really wasn't safe to feel and express some of these things. And we felt fear in that moment. And like you said, it's like raw emotional stuff. That's why I think we have to get down, like, the root of all this to me is, even though it's separation, it's the raw emotional responses that from childhood that are ingrained in our system that have us experiencing a lifetime of separation in relationship. So here we want to talk about fear, kind of like going from the bottom up a little bit, but you're right. We kind of come down first, and we might not even get to the frozen fear at first. And we have to deal then with our fear, or our fear of a feeling, expressing certain things. That's what the third dimension is all about. So fear of feeling, expressing anger. That's what I found. You said what you found. So under my good identity and unlovable with hurt and wounded was fucking rage. That's what it was. Rage. And it showed up as chronic pain. Didn't even know it was there. So here I had that from the beginning. But because I wasn't trauma informed, and the first dimension teachings didn't show it to me because they can't, I kept that chronic pain until I got to the root of it there. But that's just an example right there with the fear. It kind of pulls it all together that way.
Yeah. Also, some of us, as we start, so third dimension is, we already have witnessing capabilities, and we are deeply dedicated to presence, and we loosened up, and we are pretty thorough about knowing our ego and our different programs, and it's loosening up, and we are comfortable feeling emotions overall. So we've done a lot of work now. We are like, we got to this place. You are a seasoned warrior, man. Good job. Yeah. But so the third dimension is actual raw trauma, processing trauma, most scariest, seemingly life-threatening, the trauma and the how we crunched, held back in some way our expression, and we don't even know. We don't even know. And emotions that either we push down for so long, they come only sometimes. Like for me, this sadness, loss, and a sense of abandonment, which is like seemingly I'm going to die and I'm so alone, and terror and sadness. It never didn't come from like 25 years. So it started to come only sometimes at the end of the relationship that I finish. Yeah, I finish. I abandon them. I abandon everybody. And then it started to come just a little bit, and then it's put back in the box. So there are things we are feeling only sometimes, and then we're put in the box, or there are things that they are so, we don't even feel them. They are frozen, but they are there. They are there, and they are slow burning stuff that create all of this so-called the sense of separation. You know what I mean? So, and some of us who are doing this work, I mean, I had phases like, I was like, oh shit, Scott is right. I have anger repression. Yeah, it's hard to say no. It's hard to say, dude, just back off. Yeah, have anger repression. Do this for a few months. It's getting better. I can express. I can feel it. I'm actually, I'm a little bit afraid. I'm getting a little too kind of pissed off. Whatever. But then I realized, oh my God, I have also this sadness, this grief held back, sadness, grief, loss. Then after months and months of doing this, I'm like, oh my God, where's the fear? And as I processed the childhood, I realized little Mihai was afraid almost all the time. And I forgot. And the little Mihai is here now. There's this tough guy on top, all of these things, but there's still fear there, you know?
Yes, I do.
And what about shame? And, you know, so.
Yeah, so my experience with the third dimension, so I share, I'll just brief, is, you know, I cleared so much of all that stuff above. So much was cleared, but, you know, the chronic pain wasn't. So reversing the anger repression, chronic pain went away. And then, just like you say, the femininity repression is actually a really big thing for me. I got bullied for that. And so this is where I've come into working with the frozen fear more skillfully. It's helped me because it's so easy for me to see that it's just not safe. It's just not safe to express that in myself. But here's what I really want to say to people. If I wouldn't have these tools, I don't know that I would want to do any of this work, frankly, because it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
It really is. Because the stuff that I see around the film repression is like terror, like getting killed or something, or fag bash, as they say, you know, bashed. That's a real fear. So I have buried that, totally buried it. What I want to say to people is it's scary to think about going in that, but what we've created is a modality that makes it much safer. And I think that if you're still coming from the old way, where it's like, every time I touch into my trauma, it feels really strong, but you don't have skill. I didn't either. And so when you don't have skill and you start going into no man's land, you know, you could really fuck things up. You could really open a can of worms up. You could be in like panic state for a few days. Who knows? Like, yeah, you're probably smart not to go there without skill and the ability to regulate, but we have skill here. So it does not scare me to go into the terror around that. With their skill, it's not going to feel that way. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of energy. At times you're going to feel dysregulated, but it's not going to be like a lot of people think. And I just want to say that for anybody who's sitting there going, this is too scary. Yeah, it is without good skill. Yeah.
Scott, if we can just for the timing purposes, if we are agree with me we can talk a little bit more general about the third dimension, and then we need to have a part 2 about this to focus on the third dimension. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
So let's talk more here. We have maybe like 5 minutes. So just generally speaking, yeah, actually, I want to say that, some of us are psychedelic work. Yeah. Ayahuasca journey, MDMA, for processing mushroom, 5-MeO DMT. This is becoming increasingly more the science behind it. And there is, it's happening on the ground or on top of the ground. I've experienced with it. I can see that those stuff, they are going to the third dimension and popping things up. However, there is not enough intelligence and tools, but I think that's what's happening. The deeper stuff come up, and there is some benefit in that. However, it can destabilize you a lot. And because I don't know what that is, it becomes like, whoa, that was strange. Like, I don't 5-MeO DMT, it will bring minutes and minutes of sheer terror. And I was like, what is that? But now, after years, I'm like, yeah, man, it brought all my terror and fear from childhood and of my father and my grandfather in prison, in concentration camp, in the collective. It's just, and it's like I can't do anything. So, I don't think there are many teachings out there. I haven't encountered any that is systematic, thorough, and safe to take you gradually there.
Yeah.
Ayahuasca, it pops out the pressurized worms, but then what you do with it, you are left there on your own devices, and it may be good or it may not be so good.
Yeah. Plus, we have a lifetime of like being triggered from the trauma. And when we're triggered, our experience with that is that, that's scary. How else to say it? So it's like, we just learn over time to try to not go to these places. What I'd like to do in the next segment, I think you would too, is really break this down, this third dimension, because I think there's a lot that you and I assume that people know, but I think since we're going slow, there's a lot that I just feel into this. Let's break this down for people. Yeah. We're just talking about it generally now. The point being is now we finally got to the third dimension and we're showing you this is the root of a lot of this. We can go into it more.
Yeah, as I was following your map, basically experientially applying it on myself, I could see this, what you're talking about, it's safer. I'm defaulting, my system unwillingly is defaulting into core limiting identity. And I see people, we are doing deep process work, and I'm landing is like I have to hide. I'm bad. I'm alone. But what I verified is that, hey, what emotion is, what is underneath I have to hide? What is underneath is not safe to love fully. It's not safe to let someone in my heart. What emotion is under I'm bad? And I noticed that if I go beyond the program, there's like, I'm afraid. And or I'm so angry with my mom and with women in general without knowing that I'm so angry. I hate them.
Yes.
And this is not cool as a spiritual person to. And so I see with people, I'm like, hey, so what is it? It's like, I'm resentment. It's like, okay, are you sure that it's not like you don't hate her? Yeah, I hate them. But no, I can't. That's not okay, So here, we need to let go of this stuff and intentionally let go safety, gradually, skillfully, and to allow ourselves to feel what our ancestors didn't allow ourselves to feel, and to feel what all our life we practiced that we didn't want to feel. Hatred, deep, overwhelming, excruciating grief, star-raving fear, you know. So, however, there is a method, there is support, there is working with someone, as well as taking this, you know, there's this self-facilitation. Once you do it with someone a few times, the recommendation is, hey, don't just wait to work with your facilitator. We have some protocols, some very clear protocols to keep doing it yourself. It gets more and more manageable. Courage and confidence grows. Like, yeah, man, I can feel that. I can feel it, man. I felt it. Yeah, can we? It gets even like, and also the benefit is the idea is not, we are not going to now, I'm a hateful, angry asshole. No, this starts to move, and I'm still loving and kind, but I'm free, man.
Yeah.
Spontaneous.
Yeah.
I'm playful. I'm inspired. I'm kind, and I can be scary if I need to.
Right. All that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. I have to go for today, but let's check back into this. Definitely.
Let's continue that. So this is part one on this, and I hope that our enthusiasm that comes from the effects of this is contagious. So we have a contagion.
Definitely. We'll talk more about that too next time.
Yeah. All right, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.